I never believed a wedding could become a kidnapping until the night Damien Moretti locked me inside Black Mirror Estate. My best friend married a mafia boss to pay her family's debt, and I became collateral damage. The shy girl nobody noticed, now trapped behind steel-reinforced windows with armed guards watching my every breath. They told me obedience kept Camille safe. Resistance meant punishment. Escape meant death. But the longer I survived inside that Gothic prison, the more I realized something terrifying. The monster holding me captive wasn't the only danger lurking in the shadows. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below so I can see how far this story travels. And hit that like button. You'll want to see how this ends. The invitation arrived on thick cream cardstock with gold embossed lettering that caught the afternoon light streaming through Evelyn Harper's studio apartment. She held it carefully between paint-stained fingers, reading the elegant script for the third time that week. Camille Arden and Damien Moretti request the honor of your presence. Evelyn traced the names with her thumb, smiling despite the nervous flutter in her chest. Her best friend was getting married. Finally. After years of dating disasters and lonely Friday nights, Camille had found someone. The fact that Evelyn had never actually met the groom didn't matter. "You're overthinking it," she whispered to herself, setting the invitation back on her cluttered desk between pencil jars and half-finished sketches. "It's Vermont. Mountains. A fancy wedding. That's it." Her phone buzzed. "Camille, please tell me you're still coming. I need you there, Ev. I really, really need you." The message made Evelyn's stomach twist uncomfortably. Something in those words felt desperate. Camille never sounded desperate. Evelyn typed back quickly. "Of course. Wouldn't miss it. Already packed." She glanced at her suitcase lying open on the bed, clothes spilling out in organized chaos. 3 days in Vermont. Maid of honor duties, toast at the reception. Simple. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she added, "Are you okay?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Camille. "Yeah, just nervous. Wedding jitters, you know?" Evelyn didn't know. She'd never been close to marriage herself. At 26, her romantic history consisted of 2 forgettable relationships and a rotating collection of coffee shop crushes who never looked twice at the quiet girl sketching in the corner booth. But Camille, beautiful, fearless Camille, she was different. She'd always been the one who walked into rooms like she owned them, who laughed too loud and lived too bright. If anyone deserved a fairy tale wedding, it was her. Evelyn, "You're going to be the most beautiful bride in the world." Camille, "I love you. See you Friday." Evelyn set the phone down and stared at the invitation again. The venue name printed at the bottom suddenly felt heavier than before. Black Mirror Estate. She'd looked it up online. Ancient Gothic mansion deep in the Vermont wilderness. Built in the 1800s by some railroad magnate whose fortune collapsed during the Depression. Photos showed towering stone walls, peaked towers, endless forests. Romantic, she'd thought at the time. Now it just seemed isolated. "Stop it," Evelyn muttered, shaking her head. She grabbed her sketchbook and forced herself to focus on the illustration deadline waiting on her laptop. A children's book about a brave mouse. Innocent, simple. The kind of work that paid rent and kept her safely invisible. But her pencil wouldn't cooperate. Every line she drew felt wrong. The mouse looked frightened instead of brave. The shadows came out too dark. By Thursday night, Evelyn gave up pretending everything felt normal. She booked a rideshare for Friday morning, double-checked her bridesmaid dress, and tried to ignore the growing knot of anxiety sitting like a stone beneath her ribs. The drive to Vermont took 6 hours. Her driver, a quiet older man who didn't ask questions, followed GPS directions deeper and deeper into wilderness that swallowed the highway in walls of towering pines. Cell signal flickered. Died. Came back weak and unreliable. "You sure about this address?" he asked around hour 5, squinting at the narrow road ahead. "That's what the invitation says. Pretty remote for a wedding. Maybe they like privacy." He grunted, but didn't argue. When Black Mirror Estate finally appeared through the trees, Evelyn's breath caught. The mansion rose from the forest like something out of a Gothic novel. All dark stone and sharp angles, windows like watching eyes, iron gates that looked designed to keep people in rather than out. Autumn sunset bled red across the sky behind it, turning the whole scene into something both beautiful and vaguely threatening. "Hell of a place," the driver said quietly. Evelyn couldn't argue. Two men in black suits stood at the gate. One held a tablet. The other had something bulky beneath his jacket that Evelyn tried not to identify as a weapon. The driver rolled down his window. "Guests for the Moretti wedding." The guard with the tablet approached, face expressionless. "Name?" "Evelyn Harper," she said, leaning forward. "I'm the maid of honor." He scrolled through the tablet without acknowledging her. 30 seconds passed. Then he nodded curtly and waved them through. The gates swung open with a mechanical groan. "You want me to wait?" the driver asked as they rolled up the long gravel driveway. Evelyn considered it. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to keep an escape route available, but that was ridiculous. This was Camille's wedding, her best friend. Nothing was wrong. "No, that's okay, thank you." He gave her a look that suggested he thought she was making a mistake, but he didn't say it. Just helped her pull luggage from the trunk and drove away quickly, leaving Evelyn standing alone in front of the massive entrance. More guards. Everywhere. She counted 6 just in the immediate courtyard, all dressed identically in dark suits, all watching her with the same flat professional assessment. This didn't feel like wedding security. This felt like something else. The front door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 50s with severe gray hair and a formal black dress appeared. "Miss Harper?" "Yes." "Follow me. Miss Arden is expecting you." The inside of Blackmere Estate matched its exterior. Old money and Gothic elegance, all dark wood paneling and oil paintings of stern-faced men who probably died a century ago. Crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. But beneath the elegance, something felt wrong. Too quiet, too controlled. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the mansion. Italian, rapid and harsh. A man's laughter that sounded more like a threat than amusement. "The wedding party is staying in the East Wing," the woman said without looking back. "You'll have your own room. Dinner is at 8. The rehearsal is tomorrow afternoon." "Where's Camille?" "The bride is preparing. Can I see her?" "After you've settled." It wasn't a suggestion. Evelyn's room turned out to be bigger than her entire Brooklyn apartment. 4-poster bed, antique furniture, a window that overlooked endless forest, beautiful, expensive, and completely isolated. She tried her phone. 1 bar. Text messages wouldn't send. The anxiety she'd been pushing down all day suddenly surged back, sharp and insistent. Something was wrong. She changed into jeans and a sweater, then ventured back into the hallway. Guards patrolled in pairs, nodding at her with expressions that revealed nothing. She passed a room where men spoke Italian in low, intense voices, smelled cigar smoke and expensive cologne. Finally, she found Camille's suite at the end of the East Wing. She knocked softly. "Cam?" "It's me." Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened. Camille looked stunning. Dark hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, designer dress that probably cost more than Evelyn's car. But her eyes looked terrified. "Evie." Camille pulled her inside quickly, shutting the door. "Thank God you're here." "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything's fine." "You're lying." Camille's perfect smile cracked, just for a second. Then she was hugging Evelyn so tightly it hurt, face buried against her shoulder. "I can't talk about it," Camille whispered. "Not here. The walls. They listen to everything." "What are you talking about?" "Just stay close to me this weekend, okay? Don't wander around alone, don't ask questions, and whatever happens at the wedding—" Her voice broke. "Please don't make a scene." "Camille, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." Camille pulled back, composing herself with visible effort. The mask slipped back into place. Beautiful bride, happy and radiant. "Come on, I'll show you your dress for tomorrow. It's gorgeous." She led Evelyn through the suite, talking too quickly about flowers and centerpieces and the string quartet playing during the ceremony. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Evelyn grabbed her wrist. "Who is Damien Moretti?" Camille froze. "I mean, really," Evelyn pressed, "because this doesn't feel like a normal wedding. The guards, the guns, the way everyone looks at you like you're so—" "Property," Camille finished quietly. "They look at me like property." The word hung between them. "Your father," Evelyn said slowly, pieces clicking together. "The gambling debts." The men who came to your apartment last year. They worked for Damien. Camille's voice was barely audible. My father owed the Moretti family $3 million. This marriage is how he's paying them back. The room tilted. Evelyn sat down hard on the edge of the bed, stomach churning. That's insane. You can't just sell someone. You can if you're desperate enough. Camille's laugh sounded broken. And if the buyer is powerful enough to make sure nobody asks questions, we'll leave. Right now. We'll call the police. And tell them what? That I'm being forced to marry a mafia boss? Camille shook her head. Half the police in 3 states are on his payroll. The ones who aren't know better than to interfere. There has to be something. There isn't. Camille's eyes went dead. I signed the papers. Legal. Binding. My father's debt transfers to Damien the moment I say, I do. And if I run? She touched her throat. He made it very clear what happens to people who break contracts. Evelyn felt like she was drowning. This couldn't be real. This was America, 21st century. People didn't get sold to crime lords like medieval property transactions. But looking at her best friend's face, at the resignation and terror mixed together, she knew it was absolutely real. I should never have invited you, Camille whispered. I couldn't do this alone. I needed one person here who actually gave a damn about me instead of the money. I'm not leaving you. You should. Before you see things you can't unsee. Camille stood, smoothing her dress. The rehearsal dinner starts in 20 minutes. Wear something nice, don't stare at anyone, don't ask questions, and for God's sake, don't look Damien in the eye unless he speaks to you first. Camille, promise me, Evie. Evelyn promised. The rehearsal dinner took place in a ballroom that could have hosted 100 people, but only held 30. Crystal. Gold. Candlelight reflecting off polished surfaces. The kind of elegance that felt more like a stage set than a celebration. Evelyn sat at the head table between Camille and a man who introduced himself as Adrian Moretti, the groom's cousin. He was handsome in a casual way, dark hair, easy smile, the kind of charm that probably got him out of trouble more often than into it. So you're the famous best friend, Adrian said, pouring her wine. Camille talks about you constantly. Does she? Says you're the talented one. Illustrator, right? Freelance, mostly children's books. That's lovely. He sounded genuine. This world could use more people creating beautiful things instead of... He gestured vaguely at the room. All this. Evelyn studied him carefully. Are you part of the family business? Depends on the day. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Sometimes I'm the diplomat. Sometimes I'm the cleanup crew. Mostly I just try to keep my head down and survive. Before she could ask what that meant, a door opened at the far end of the ballroom. Everyone stopped talking. Damien Moretti entered like winter itself, cold, elegant, absolutely in control. Mid-30s, expensive suit that probably cost more than Evelyn's annual rent, dark hair swept back from a face that might have been handsome if it wasn't so utterly expressionless. He moved through the room and conversations restarted, but differently. Careful. Measured. Like everyone was suddenly aware of playing roles. When Damien reached the head table, Camille stood automatically. He kissed her cheek, a performance. Nothing in his face suggested affection or even interest. You look beautiful, he said. Not a compliment, just a statement of fact. Thank you. And this is the friend. Damien's attention shifted to Evelyn. She froze. His eyes were the coldest thing she'd ever seen. Not cruel, not angry, just empty, like looking into a well with no bottom. Evelyn Harper, he said, as if testing the name. The maid of honor. Yes. Camille speaks highly of you. She's my best friend. Loyalty is rare. He said it like he was discussing the weather. Valuable when genuine, dangerous when misplaced. Adrian coughed. Damien, leave the poor girl alone. She just got here. I'm simply introducing myself. Damien's gaze never left Evelyn's face. We're going to be family soon. It's important that Miss Harper understands how this family works. I understand, Evelyn said quietly, even though she didn't. Do you? He tilted his head slightly. Because from what Camille tells me, you're the type who sees the best in people, who believes in fairness and justice, and all those other fairy tales they teach in school. Is that a bad thing? It's a dangerous thing. He finally looked away, back to Camille. Naivety gets people killed. Then he moved on to greet other guests, leaving Evelyn shaking in her chair. Don't take it personally, Adrian murmured. He tests everyone, looking for weakness. Did I pass? You're still breathing, aren't you? The dinner lasted 3 hours. Speeches, toasts, laughter that sounded forced. Evelyn picked at her food and watched Camille pretend to be happy while Damien sat beside her like a statue, speaking only when necessary, touching her only for appearances. This wasn't a marriage. It was a transaction. Around 11, exhausted and overwhelmed, Evelyn excused herself. She found her way back through the mansion's maze of hallways, passing guards who tracked her movement with professional disinterest. Her room felt like a cage. She tried her phone again. No signal. She thought about finding a landline, calling someone, anyone. But who? And what would she even say? Evelyn changed into pajamas and climbed into the massive bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow was the wedding. Sunday she'd leave, go back to Brooklyn and her quiet little life and try to forget everything she'd seen here. Except she knew she wouldn't forget. She knew this weekend was going to change everything. Sleep came in restless pieces. The wedding day dawned cold and gray. Evelyn woke to someone knocking on her door. Miss Harper, the bride needs you. She dressed quickly and hurried to Camille's suite. Inside, an army of stylists and makeup artists worked with military precision. Camille sat in front of a mirror, face pale beneath expensive cosmetics. There you are, she said softly. I was afraid you'd left. I promised I'd stay. People break promises. Evelyn took her hand. Not me. They spent the morning in careful silence while strangers transformed Camille into a perfect bride. The dress was stunning. White silk and lace, probably Italian, definitely worth more than a car. Her hair fell in elegant waves. Diamonds glittered at her throat. She looked like a princess. She looked like a sacrifice. At 2 o'clock, they moved to a private room near the ceremony hall. Just the two of them. Final moments before everything changed. I need you to know something, Camille said, gripping Evelyn's hands. No matter what happens after today, if you hear things about me, about this family, I need you to remember that I love you, that you were the best friend I ever had. Stop talking like you're dying. I'm not dying. I'm just disappearing into this life, into his world. Camille's voice cracked. The girl you knew won't exist anymore. That's not true. It is, and I need you to let her go. Tears threatened to ruin her makeup. Promise me you'll let her go. Evelyn pulled her into a hug, holding tight. I promise. Lies, all lies. She wasn't letting go of anything. The ceremony took place in the estate's grand hall. 50 guests, more guards than wedding guests. Italian spoken in hushed conversations. Everyone dressed like they were attending a funeral instead of a wedding. Evelyn stood at the altar in her bridesmaid dress, watching Camille walk down the aisle on her father's arm. The man looked 20 years older than the last time Evelyn had seen him, hollow-eyed, defeated, unable to meet his daughter's gaze. Damien waited at the altar like a statue. When Camille reached him, her father practically shoved her forward before retreating to his seat, head down. The ceremony blurred. Words in English and Italian, vows that sounded like business contracts, rings exchanged with mechanical precision. Camille's hands shook when she said, I do. Damien's voice was steady as stone, and just like that, it was over. Her best friend belonged to a monster. The reception started immediately. More champagne, more forced laughter. A string quartet playing classical music while criminals congratulated each other on a successful merger. Evelyn drank too much wine and tried not to think about what happened after weddings, about wedding nights, about Camille alone with that cold, empty man. Around 8, she escaped to the garden for air. The estate grounds stretched endlessly into forest, lit by torches and security lights. She walked until the party sounds faded, until she could breathe without feeling like she was suffocating. You shouldn't be out here alone, Evelyn spun. A man emerged from the shadows, older than the guards, maybe 60, with a scar running from his ear to his chin. He wore a suit like the others, but carried himself differently, more dangerous, more real. I needed air, she said carefully. Understandable. It's a lot to process. He lit a cigarette, smoke curling into the night. You're the friend, the artist. How do you know that? I know everything that happens in this house. He studied her through the smoke. You're wondering if you can save her. Evelyn's throat tightened. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. You're wondering if there's a way to get Camille out, to break the contract, to fix this nightmare. He took a long drag. There isn't. You don't know that. I've worked for the Moretti family for 30 years. I've seen girls like Camille before. Pretty things sold to settle debts. Some of them learn to survive, some don't. His eyes held terrible knowledge. But none of them ever escape. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand the reality. This isn't a fairy tale where love conquers all. This is business, cold, final. And if you try to interfere, he shook his head. Well, that would be unfortunate. For who? For everyone. He dropped the cigarette, crushing it beneath his heel. Go back to the party, Miss Harper. Smile. Toast the happy couple. Then go home to Brooklyn and forget you were ever here. He walked away before she could respond. Evelyn stood alone in the garden, hands shaking, mind racing. She should leave, right now, call a cab, pack her bag, and run back to her safe little life. But when she returned to the reception, she found Camille dancing with Damien in the center of the ballroom, his hand on her waist, her face carefully blank. And Evelyn knew she couldn't leave. Not yet. The reception wound down around midnight. Guests departed in expensive cars. Guards escorted people to various rooms throughout the estate. Camille disappeared with Damien, and Evelyn tried not to think about what came next. She returned to her room, changed into pajamas, and stared out the window at the dark forest beyond. Tomorrow she'd leave. Tomorrow she'd figure out how to help Camille. Tomorrow everything would make sense. She was almost asleep when her door opened. Evelyn sat up fast, heart hammering. Hello? 2 guards entered, large, professional, expressions carved from granite. Come with us, one said flatly. Why? What's wrong? Mr. Moretti wants to see you. Now? It's almost 1 in the morning. Now! They didn't give her time to change, just escorted her through the silent mansion in her pajamas and bare feet, down hallways that grew progressively darker and colder. Finally, they stopped at a heavy wooden door, knocked twice. Enter! They pushed her inside and closed the door behind her. The office was pure intimidation. Dark wood, leather furniture, walls lined with books that probably cost more than her education. Damien Moretti sat behind a massive desk, still in his wedding suit, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Miss Harper, he said calmly. Please sit. Evelyn's legs barely held her. She sank into the chair across from him. I apologize for the late hour, Damien continued as if this was a normal business meeting. But we need to have a conversation. About what? About your presence here, your relationship with my wife, your plans moving forward. I don't understand. Don't you? He set down his glass. You spent the entire evening watching Camille like a guard dog, whispering in corners, making plans. We weren't. Please don't insult my intelligence. His voice never rose. Didn't need to. I have cameras, microphones, guards who report every conversation. I know exactly what you discussed in her room yesterday. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. We weren't planning anything. We're just friends. Friends can be dangerous. Damien leaned back. Especially naive friends who believe they can fix broken situations through sheer moral conviction. I want to go home. That was the plan. You'd leave tomorrow, return to your quiet little life, send concerned text messages that Camille would ignore. Eventually, you'd move on. So let me leave. I've changed my mind. The words landed like blows. Evelyn stared at him. What? You're not leaving tomorrow. You're not leaving at all. Damien said it like he was discussing dinner plans. As of tonight, you are a guest of the Moretti family for the foreseeable future. You can't just keep me here. I absolutely can. In fact, I already have. He gestured casually. Your bag has been moved to a more secure room. Your phone is being monitored, and before you consider making noise. He pulled out his own phone, turning the screen toward her. Security footage. Camille alone in her room, crying. If you cause problems, Damien said softly, she suffers. If you attempt escape, she pays the price. If you contact authorities, I will make sure Camille understands exactly who brought consequences down on her head. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do this? Because she cares about you. Because that gives me leverage. He stood, buttoning his jacket. You're going to be a very well-treated hostage, Miss Harper. Comfortable room, good food, books, art supplies. Everything you need except freedom. This is insane. This is business. And you, unfortunately, have become a valuable asset. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you're thinking about appealing to Adrian or any of the others for help, don't. They answer to me. Every single person in this estate understands the cost of disloyalty. The door opened. The guards waited. They'll show you to your new accommodation, Damien said. I suggest you get comfortable. You're going to be here a very long time. They escorted her through corridors she didn't recognize, downstairs that descended deeper into the estate's foundation. Finally, they reached a room. Beautiful. Luxurious. Everything Damien promised. And when they closed the door, she heard the lock click from outside. Evelyn pressed her hands against the steel-reinforced window and stared out at the forest bathed in moonlight. The shy girl who'd arrived yesterday believing in fairy tale weddings was gone. The woman who remained understood exactly what she'd become. A prisoner. A hostage. A pawn in a game she never asked to play. And somewhere above her in the darkness, her best friend was trapped in a nightmare. The first morning, Evelyn didn't move from the bed. She lay there staring at the ceiling, counting cracks in the plaster, trying to convince herself this was temporary. A mistake. Something that would resolve itself if she just stayed quiet and cooperative. By afternoon, reality settled in like rot. The door stayed locked. The window wouldn't open. When she pressed her face against the reinforced glass, all she saw was forest and guards patrolling the grounds with rifles slung over their shoulders like this was a military compound instead of a wedding venue. Around 3, someone knocked. Miss Harper, I'm bringing lunch. The door opened just wide enough for a woman in a gray uniform to slide a tray inside. She was young, maybe early 20s, with dark eyes that wouldn't quite meet Evelyn's. Wait, Evelyn said quickly. Please, I need to talk to someone. This is a mistake. I shouldn't be. I'm just here to bring food. The girl's voice was flat, professional. Is there anything else you need? I need to leave. I'll note your request. No, you don't understand. But the door was already closing, lock clicking back into place. Evelyn stared at the tray. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, a bottle of sparkling water. The kind of meal that probably cost $50 at a restaurant. She threw it against the wall, china shattered. Food splattered across expensive wallpaper. The violence felt good for exactly 3 seconds before the reality of her situation came crashing back. She was trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. And nobody was coming to save her. That night, Evelyn tried the door 17 times, tested the window, searched every corner of the room for something, anything that could be used as a tool or weapon, found nothing except luxury, softness, a gilded cage designed to keep her comfortable and compliant. She fell asleep on the floor beside the bed, too exhausted to cry anymore. The pattern repeated itself for 3 days. Meals delivered in silence, guards changing shifts outside her door. No contact with anyone except brief glimpses of the staff who treated her like a piece of furniture that needed maintenance. On the 4th day, Adrian knocked. Evelyn, can I come in? She scrambled to her feet as the door opened. He entered carrying a stack of books and what looked like an art supply case, genuine concern etched across his features. Jesus, he said quietly, taking in her appearance. When's the last time you slept? What do you care? I care. He set the books on the desk. I know this situation is complicated, but I thought maybe these would help. Pass the time. Evelyn stared at the art supplies. High-quality pencils, sketchbooks, the kind of materials she saved up for months to afford back in Brooklyn. You think pencils make this okay? Her voice came out raw. You think I'm going to sit here and draw pretty pictures while your cousin holds me prisoner? No. I think you're going to lose your mind if you don't have something to focus on besides these 4 walls. Adrian's expression softened. I'm not your enemy, Evelyn. You work for him. I survive him. There's a difference. He moved toward the door, then paused. Camille asks about you constantly. She's terrified Damien's going to hurt you. Where is she? In the main house, playing the role of devoted wife. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. She doesn't have a choice either, you know. None of us do. Then help me leave. Adrian's face went carefully blank. I can't. Won't, you mean? Can't, won't, same result. He gestured at the art supplies. Use them. Don't use them. But I'll keep bringing things if you want. Books, music, whatever makes this bearable. After he left, Evelyn stood frozen for a long moment. Then she grabbed one of the sketchbooks and hurled it across the room. It felt good. So she threw another. And another. Until paper scattered everywhere and her hands were shaking and she collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. Eventually, she picked up a pencil, started drawing, her mother's face, Camille laughing over coffee, the Brooklyn skyline at sunset, every memory of freedom she could summon from the wreckage of her life. The sketches came out jagged, angry, nothing like her usual soft, gentle style, but they kept her sane. 2 weeks crawled by. Adrian visited every few days, bringing supplies and carefully neutral conversation. He never acknowledged the locked door or the guards or the fundamental wrongness of the situation, just talked about books and art and mundane topics that felt obscene given the circumstances. You're good at this, he said one afternoon, studying her latest sketch. Really good. These aren't children's book illustrations. I save those for when I'm not being held hostage. Fair point. He set the drawing down carefully. Have you always been an artist? Since I could hold a pencil. What made you want to draw for children? Evelyn almost didn't answer. Then the words came tumbling out, desperate for any human connection. Because kids still believe the world can be kind. I wanted to contribute to that, give them something beautiful before they learn how ugly things really are. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. You still believe that? After everything? I don't know what I believe anymore. That night, someone screamed. Evelyn bolted upright in bed, heart hammering. The sound came from somewhere above, raw, agonized, cut short by something she didn't want to imagine. Then silence. Terrible, complete silence. She pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear anything. Footsteps, voices, movement. Nothing. When morning came, nobody mentioned the scream. The staff delivered breakfast like always. Adrian didn't visit. The guards changed shifts with mechanical precision, but Evelyn noticed something different. One of them had blood on his cuff. What happened last night? She asked when the young woman brought lunch. I don't know what you mean. Someone screamed. I didn't hear anything. The girl's hands trembled slightly as she set down the tray. You should eat. Keep your strength up. Why? What do I need strength for? But she was already gone. That evening, the door opened again. Damien entered like winter, cold, elegant, completely at ease. He wore a different suit than the wedding. Dark gray, perfectly tailored, not a single hair out of place. Evelyn scrambled backward until she hit the wall. Relax, he said calmly. I'm just here to check on your accommodation. Make sure you have everything you need. I need to leave. Besides that, he surveyed the room with clinical detachment. Adrian tells me you're using the art supplies. That's good. Idle minds cause problems. Where's Camille? With her husband, where a wife belongs. His gaze settled on her face. She's been asking to see you. I told her no. Why? Because I decide what happens in this house. When it happens. To whom? He said it like he was explaining basic mathematics. Camille needs to understand that her actions have consequences. That caring about people makes them vulnerable. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. Damien moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Monsters act on impulse, rage, emotion. I act on calculation, strategy. There's a difference. Not to me. Not yet, but you'll learn. He turned back to face her. You're going to be here a very long time, Miss Harper. Years, probably. And during that time, you'll have two choices. You can fight reality and make yourself miserable. Or you can adapt. Find purpose within your constraints. I'll never stop fighting you. We'll see. He moved toward the door. By the way, that scream you heard last night, that was a guard who got caught stealing from my office. He thought he could take what wasn't his, sell information to competitors. Damien's voice never changed tone. His family will receive his body tomorrow morning, along with a very generous severance package. The door closed behind him. Evelyn slid down the wall, gasping for air. This wasn't just captivity. This was something far worse. She was trapped inside the mind of a man who saw human life as nothing more than accounting entries, assets, liabilities, numbers on a balance sheet, and she had no idea how to survive that. 3 weeks became 4, then 5. Evelyn developed routines because routines kept her from screaming. Wake at 7, sketch until noon, read during afternoon, exercise after dinner, sleep when exhaustion finally dragged her under. Adrian continued his visits, carefully avoiding any topic that acknowledged reality. They discussed books, music, the weather beyond her window, never the locked door, never Camille, never the fact that Evelyn was disappearing piece by piece into this beautiful prison. One afternoon, Adrian brought a chess set. "Thought you might want a challenge," he said, setting up the board. "Unless you don't play?" "I know the rules." "Good. I'm terrible at going easy on people." They played in silence for 20 minutes. Evelyn lost badly. Played again. Lost again. On the third game, she finally spoke. "Why do you stay here?" Adrian's hand froze over a night. "Excuse me?" "You clearly hate this life. Hate what Damien does. Hate being part of this family." She moved her bishop. "So why not leave?" "Because leaving means dying." He captured her bishop with brutal efficiency. "The Moretti family doesn't do retirement packages. You're in until you're dead or they kill you for disloyalty." "That's insane." "That's reality." He leaned back, studying the board. "I was born into this. My father was Damien's uncle. When I was 8, I watched someone put 3 bullets in my father's chest because he tried to steal from the organization. Damien, who was only 17 at the time, finished the job himself." Adrian's voice went distant. "Then he took me in, raised me, made sure I understood exactly what happens to people who betray family trust." Evelyn's stomach churned. "That's horrible." "That's survival." He moved his queen. "Check." She stared at the board. Her king was trapped. No way out, just like her. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you asked, and because—" He hesitated. "Because I think you deserve to understand what you're up against. Damien isn't going to wake up one day and decide to be kind. He's not going to have an epiphany. This is who he is. This is what he'll always be. Then we're all prisoners. Some of us just have prettier cells." Adrian stood. "I'll see you next week." After he left, Evelyn sat staring at the chessboard for hours, thinking, planning, understanding for the first time that hope wasn't going to save her. Strategy might. 6 weeks in, the routine broke. Evelyn woke to voices outside her door, harsh, rapid Italian. Something heavy being dragged. Then silence. When breakfast came, the young woman's hands were shaking so badly the tray rattled. "What's going on?" Evelyn asked. "Nothing." "You're terrified." "I'm fine. Please, I need to know what's happening out there." The girl's composure cracked. "Someone tried to kill Mr. Moretti last night. Bomb in his car. He wasn't in it, but 3 guards died." Tears streaked her face. "Now he's questioning everyone, looking for traitors. And when he finds them—" She didn't need to finish. Evelyn spent the day listening to sounds filtering through walls and floors, shouting, gunshots, more screaming that ended too quickly. By evening, the mansion felt like a tomb. When Adrian finally appeared 2 days later, he looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, blood on his collar he hadn't bothered washing off. "Don't ask," he said before Evelyn could speak. "I won't." They sat in silence. No chess, no conversation, just 2 people existing in the same horrible space. Finally, Adrian said, "He wants to see you." "Damien?" "Tomorrow. In his office." Adrian's jaw tightened. "He's been in a mood since the bombing. Paranoid, violent, whatever he asks you, just answer honestly. Don't try to be clever, don't try to protect anyone." "Why would he want to see me?" "I don't know, but when Damien summons people in this state," Adrian met her eyes, "some of them don't come back." He left before Evelyn could respond. She didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed counting her heartbeats, trying to prepare for whatever came next. When guards arrived in the morning, she went without resisting. They escorted her through the mansion's main levels, the first time she'd seen anything beyond her room in weeks. The place looked different now. More guards, more weapons. Everyone moving with barely contained violence. Damien's office looked exactly the same. He sat behind his desk reviewing papers, suit immaculate, not a single indication that he'd spent the past 48 hours hunting traitors through his own organization. "Miss Harper," he said without looking up. "Sit." She sat. He continued reading for another minute, then set the papers aside and finally met her gaze. "I'm going to ask you a question," he said calmly, "and I need you to understand that I will know if you're lying. I have people who are very skilled at detecting deception, so consider your answer carefully." Evelyn's throat was desert dry. "Okay. Has Adrian Moretti discussed anything with you regarding my business operations? Security protocols? Family vulnerabilities?" The question landed like a blade. She thought about Adrian's visits, the carefully neutral conversations, the way he never quite met her eyes when discussing Damien. "No," she said. "You're certain?" "He brings me books. We play chess. We talk about art." Her voice steadied. "He's never mentioned anything about your business." Damien studied her face for 30 seconds that felt like hours, then nodded. "Good. That's what I thought." "Why would you think he had?" "Because my cousin has always been weak, sentimental, the kind of person who believes loyalty and compassion can coexist in this world." He stood, moving to the window. "After the bombing, I had to consider every possibility, every potential leak. And you thought, Adrian, I thought nothing. I verified." He turned back to face her. "The bomber was caught this morning. One of my father's old associates trying to settle a 20-year-old grudge. Adrian had nothing to do with it." Relief flooded through her. "So I can go back to my room?" "Not yet." Damien returned to his desk. "I brought you here for another reason. Camille is pregnant." The words punched the air from Evelyn's lungs. "What?" 2 months. Confirmed yesterday." His expression remained completely neutral. "She's been asking to see you, constantly. It's becoming disruptive. So let me see her. I'm considering it, but first I need you to understand the new dynamic." He leaned forward slightly. "That child represents a permanent bond between Camille and this family. It ensures her complete cooperation, her total commitment to this marriage." "You mean it's another chain?" "I mean it's insurance." He said it like discussing a financial instrument. "And you, Miss Harper, are now part of that insurance policy." "I don't understand." "Camille is more compliant when she knows you're safe, more willing to fulfill her obligations as my wife. That makes you valuable." His eyes were chips of ice. "But if she becomes problematic, if she attempts to leave, or contacts authorities, or in any way threatens this family's interests, then your situation becomes significantly less comfortable. You're using me to control her." "I'm using available resources strategically. It's what I do." He pulled a folder from his drawer. "You're going to be moved to a different room, closer to the main house. You'll be allowed supervised visits with Camille, limited freedom within the estate." "Why?"
But to some odd sorts,
"Because a completely isolated hostage becomes unstable, unpredictable. I need you functional, cooperative." He slid the folder across the desk. "These are the new rules. Read them, memorize them. Breaking any single rule results in immediate return to isolation. Breaking multiple rules results in worse." Evelyn opened the folder with shaking hands. The list was extensive, detailed, covering everything from approved locations to conversation topics to consequences for non-compliance. At the bottom, a final line. "Attempts at escape will result in punishment to Camille Moretti and termination of all privileges." "Do you understand?" Damien asked. "Yes." "Good. You'll be moved this afternoon." He returned to his papers, dismissing her. "One more thing. Camille cannot know the specifics of your arrangement. As far as she's concerned, I'm allowing this out of generosity, not strategy. You want me to lie to her? I want you to protect her from information that would cause her distress during a difficult pregnancy." He didn't look up. "Stress is bad for the baby." The guards escorted her back through the mansion. But instead of returning to her isolated cell, they led her to a different wing, a new room, still locked, still monitored, but with windows that actually showed the gardens, a desk with better lighting, bookshelves filled with novels. The cage had gotten bigger, but it was still a cage. That evening, someone knocked. "Evelyn?" Camille's voice. The door opened and suddenly they were embracing, both crying, holding on to each other like drowning people clutching wreckage. "I'm so sorry," Camille sobbed. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I never should have brought you here." "Stop. Don't." Evelyn pulled back, gripping her shoulders. "This isn't your fault." But looking at her best friend, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes, the new hollowness in her cheeks, the way her hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach, Evelyn understood exactly how trapped they both were. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "No, but I'm surviving." Camille's smile was broken glass. "That's all any of us can do here. Survive." They sat on the bed and talked for 2 hours under the watchful eye of a guard stationed by the door, carefully avoiding topics that mattered, discussing books and weather and memories of Brooklyn like those things could somehow transport them away from this nightmare. When Camille finally left, Evelyn felt simultaneously better and infinitely worse. Because seeing her friend confirmed what she already knew. This wasn't temporary, this was their life now. Weeks blurred together after that. Evelyn settled into her new routine. Limited walks through the gardens under guard supervision, visits with Camille twice a week, art sessions in her room, chess games with Adrian, who seemed increasingly troubled by something he wouldn't discuss. On the surface, it looked almost normal. Beneath, she was planning. Every walk she memorized patrol patterns, guard shift changes, weak points in the estate's perimeter, where cameras pointed and where they didn't. She started loosening the bolts on her window frame piece by piece using a butter knife stolen during dinner. Tiny movements, imperceptible progress, building an escape route from molecules. 3 months into captivity, Adrian arrived looking genuinely excited. "I have something for you," he said, producing a tablet. "Damien approved internet access, supervised, limited sites, but you can email your family. Let them know you're okay." Evelyn stared at the device like it was a snake. "Why would he allow that?" "Because your mother filed a missing persons report. Brooklyn PD started asking questions. Damien needs you to convince them you left voluntarily, that you're traveling, safe." Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. "The emails will be monitored. Anything that suggests distress or captivity will be deleted and your privileges revoked." "Of course. I know this is just another manipulation, but..." He set the tablet down. "It's better than complete isolation, isn't it?" After he left, Evelyn spent an hour staring at the blank email screen. Then she started typing. "Hi, Mom. I'm so sorry I disappeared without warning. A friend needed help with a family emergency in Vermont, and I came up to support her. Everything's fine. I'm safe. Just been too busy to check in properly. The cell's signal here is terrible, so email is easiest. I'll call when I can. Love you, Evelyn." She hit send before she could reconsider. The lie tasted like ash, but Adrian was right. It was better than nothing. Over the following weeks, she maintained the fiction through carefully crafted emails, talked about beautiful scenery, helping Camille, enjoying a break from city life. Every word felt like a betrayal of her old self, but it kept her mother from sending more authorities, from asking more questions, from getting hurt. Meanwhile, Camille's pregnancy progressed. Her stomach rounded. Morning sickness gave way to cautious hope. Damien remained as cold as ever, but he made sure she had the best doctors, the best care, another form of control disguised as concern. One afternoon in late autumn, Evelyn and Camille walked through the gardens while leaves fell like dying butterflies around them. "I felt the baby move yesterday," Camille said quietly. "First time. What did it feel like?" "Terrifying, wonderful, like proof that I can't ever leave." She stopped walking, one hand on her stomach. This baby is going to grow up in this world, around violence and crime and people like Damien, and there's nothing I can do to protect her from it. "Her? I think it's a girl. I don't know why. Just a feeling." Camille's eyes were distant. "I keep thinking about what kind of mother I can be in a place like this, what kind of person she'll become." "You'll be a good mother. Will I? Or will I just teach her how to survive a cage?" Camille turned to face her. "Promise me something. If anything happens to me, if the pregnancy goes wrong or Damien decides I'm not useful anymore, promise you'll look out for her." "Nothing's going to happen. Promise me, Evie." Evelyn gripped her hand. I promise. That night, the guard outside Evelyn's room changed. New face, younger, less experienced looking. She filed that information away. By December, her window bolts were nearly free. Just a few more careful sessions with the butter knife and she'd be able to remove the entire frame. Then what? She had no money, no phone, no way to get past the gates or through the forest without being caught. But having an escape route, even an impossible one, made breathing easier. Adrian noticed the change in her. "You seem different," he said during their weekly chess game. "Calmer. I'm adapting, like Damien wanted." "That's not adaptation, that's planning." He moved his bishop. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about survival." "Survival means acceptance." "Does it?" She captured his bishop. "Or does it mean finding the smallest crack in the wall and exploiting it until the whole thing comes down?" Adrian studied her face for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He leaned forward and whispered, "The East Gate security system has a 30-second delay when it reboots. Every night at 2 a.m. for system maintenance." Evelyn's heart stopped. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of watching good people disappear into this family's machinery." His voice was barely audible. "Because maybe, just maybe, someone should actually escape." "You're lying, testing me." "Maybe I am." He leaned back, voice returning to normal volume. "Or maybe I'm just tired of playing chess with someone who's already given up." The game continued. Neither spoke about what had just happened. But when Adrian left, Evelyn found a small piece of paper tucked between the chess pieces. A rough sketch of the estate's eastern perimeter, with guard patrol routes marked in pencil. Her hands shook as she memorized every line, every notation, every potential weakness. Then she burned it in the bathroom sink and flushed the ashes. That night, she removed the last bolt from her window frame. It came free silently, carefully, perfectly. She could escape. The knowledge sat in her chest like lightning. For 3 weeks, she planned, memorized patrol patterns down to the second, gathered supplies, a jacket, sturdy shoes, food stolen piece by piece from meals, waited for the right combination of weather and opportunity. On a Tuesday night in late December, freezing rain hammered against the windows. Visibility would be terrible. Guards would be miserable and distracted. Perfect. At 1:30 a.m., Evelyn, dressed in dark clothes, removed the window frame, stared down at the garden 2 stories below. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. This was insane. Impossible. If she got caught. She thought about Camille, about the baby growing inside her friend, about spending the rest of her life in this beautiful prison watching Damien's child grow up in a world of violence. Then she climbed through the window. The drop was shorter than she'd feared. She landed hard, rolled, came up running. Rain slashed across her face. Thunder covered her footsteps. She sprinted through gardens she'd memorized during supervised walks, heading for the eastern gate. 2 minutes to reach the perimeter. 1 minute to find the gate. 30 seconds for the security system to reboot. Her lungs burned. Legs screamed. Fear threatened to freeze her in place, but she kept moving because stopping meant dying. She reached the gate at 1:58 a.m., pressed herself against the wall. Counted seconds. 58. 59. 2 a.m. The security panel flickered. Reset. 30 seconds. Evelyn grabbed the manual release and pulled. The gate swung open. She was through. Running. Barefoot now because her shoes had fallen off. Forest swallowing her, freedom so close she could taste it. Then floodlights exploded. The world turned white and terrible. Armed men materialized from shadows, rifles raised, voices shouting commands. And standing in the center of the chaos, completely dry under an umbrella held by a guard, was Damien Moretti. He looked almost amused. "Miss Harper," he said calmly over the rain and thunder, "I was wondering how long it would take." Adrian stepped out of the darkness beside him. Not a prisoner. Not restrained. Standing there like he'd been waiting for this moment. Understanding crashed through Evelyn like glass shattering. The security codes, the patrol schedules, the window that suddenly became escapable. All of it had been a test, a trap. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." "Take her to the basement," Damien said. "I'll deal with her in the morning." They grabbed her roughly, dragged her back through the gates she'd almost crossed. The last thing Evelyn saw before they threw her into darkness was Adrian's face. He looked genuinely sorry, but not sorry enough to stop it. The basement room had no windows, no light except what filtered under the door. Concrete floor, metal cot, nothing else. Evelyn curled into a ball and screamed until her throat was raw. Above her, somewhere in the mansion, Camille would wake tomorrow and find her missing. Would wonder if she'd escaped. Would hope, briefly, that someone had finally gotten free. Then Damien would tell her the truth, and that hope would die too. Time stopped meaning anything in the basement. No windows meant no sun. No clock meant no hours. Just darkness that pressed against Evelyn's eyes until she couldn't remember what light looked like. They brought food once a day. Maybe. She wasn't sure. A tray slid through a slot in the door. Stale bread. Water. Sometimes a bruised apple that tasted like punishment. She stopped eating after the third day. Or what she thought was the third day. Her body didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered except the darkness and the cold concrete and the way her mind kept replaying the moment Adrian's face appeared beside Damien's under the floodlights. She'd trusted him. Believed the careful sympathy in his eyes, the books he brought, the chess games, the whispered security codes. All of it had been theater. A performance designed to test whether the shy girl would betray the kindness shown to her, whether she'd try to escape the moment opportunity presented itself. And she had, exactly as predicted. Evelyn laughed until she choked. The sound echoed off concrete walls and came back distorted, making her sound like something broken beyond repair. Maybe she was. On what might have been the 7th day, or the 10th, or the 20th, the door finally opened. Light flooded in like violence. Evelyn threw her arm across her eyes, gasping. Her pupils burned. Her head spun. "Get up!" Guards. 2 of them, large and expressionless. "I can't!" They grabbed her arms and hauled her upright. Her legs buckled. They dragged her anyway, feet scraping across concrete as they pulled her from the cell. The journey back through the mansion felt like moving through a nightmare. Everything too bright, too loud. Her body weak from days without proper food or movement. They threw her into a bathroom. "Clean yourself. You have 10 minutes." The door locked. Evelyn stared at her reflection in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Hollow eyes. Greasy hair. Skin pale as corpse wax. She looked like something that had crawled out of a grave. She stripped and stood under scalding water until her skin turned red. Washed away days of filth and fear. Put on the clean clothes they'd left. Simple gray dress, underwear, nothing with pockets or anything that could be weaponized. When they came back, she walked on her own. Small victory, pathetic, but hers. They took her to Damien's office. He sat behind his desk reading reports like always. Suit immaculate. Hair perfect. No indication that he'd spent the past week torturing someone in his basement. "Sit," he said without looking up. Evelyn sat because standing required more energy than she had left. Damien finished reading, set the papers aside, finally met her eyes. "You look terrible." She said nothing. "The basement isn't meant to be comfortable. It's meant to teach lessons." He leaned back in his chair. "Have you learned yours?" "Go to hell." There it is, the anger. He almost smiled. "Good. I was worried we'd broken something essential. Rage means you're still functional." "Functional for what? More tests? More psychological torture?" Her voice came out raw. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand your place in this ecosystem. You're not a guest. You're not family. You're a resource." He said it like discussing inventory. "And resources that attempt to steal themselves lose value. Then kill me. Get it over with. Killing you would upset Camille. Upset Camille upsets the baby. I don't harm pregnant women unnecessarily." He stood, moving to the window. "No, Miss Harper, you're going to live. But your circumstances are going to change significantly. Back to the basement? Worse. You're going to watch Camille suffer because of your choices." The words landed like punches. Evelyn lunged forward. "You can't. She didn't do anything." Guards materialized instantly, shoving her back into the chair. Damien didn't even flinch. "She harbors feelings for you. That makes her vulnerable. And I've decided vulnerability needs consequences." He returned to his desk. "Starting today, Camille's privileges are revoked. No more garden walks. No more visits with you. No more books or music or small comforts that made her captivity bearable. She's pregnant. You said you don't harm. I'm not harming her physically, just removing luxuries. Making sure she understands that your betrayal has costs. His eyes were ice. Every day you spend thinking about your escape attempt, she spends thinking about what she lost because of it. You're a monster. I'm a teacher, and you're both learning valuable lessons about loyalty and consequences. He pressed a button on his desk. Take her back to her room, the nice one, where she can think about what she's done. They dragged her out before she could respond. Her room, the bigger cell with windows and bookshelves, felt like mockery now. All this space, all this comfort, while Camille suffered in isolation because of her. Evelyn collapsed on the bed and screamed into pillows until her throat gave out. 3 days passed in silence. No visitors. No Adrian with his false sympathy. No staff making small talk. Just meals delivered by guards who wouldn't meet her eyes. On the 4th day, someone knocked. Evelyn didn't respond. Didn't move. Just lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. The door opened anyway. Camille stood in the doorway looking like a ghost, thinner than before. Dark circles under her eyes. One hand on her swollen stomach. Cam, don't. Camille's voice was cold. Don't say my name like we're still friends. The words cut deeper than the basement had. Evelyn sat up slowly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't think. That's the problem. You didn't think. Camille moved into the room with careful, measured steps. You didn't think about what would happen to me when you tried to run. You didn't think about the baby. You just thought about yourself. That's not fair. Fair? Camille laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? I've spent the last week locked in a room smaller than this bathroom. No windows, no books, no music, just 4 walls and a guard who brings food twice a day. She pressed both hands to her stomach. I have panic attacks now. Did you know that? I wake up gasping, thinking the walls are closing in, thinking something's wrong with the baby because stress is bad for pregnancy, but I can't stop being stressed because my best friend tried to abandon me here. I wasn't abandoning you. I was trying to escape so I could get help. Bullshit. You were trying to save yourself. Camille's voice broke. And I don't even blame you for that. I blame you for being stupid enough to trust Adrian, for falling into the exact trap Damien set, for proving to him that neither of us can be trusted. Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face. I didn't know. I thought Adrian was different. Nobody here is different. We're all just trying to survive. And you made survival harder for both of us. Camille sank into the chair by the window. Damien told me I could see you one time, to tell you exactly how your choices affected me, to make sure you understand the consequences. I understand. I do. Please. After this, we're not friends anymore. Camille said it like pronouncing a death sentence. We don't visit. We don't write letters. We exist in the same house as strangers who once cared about each other. You can't mean that. I have to mean it. Because caring about you is what gave Damien leverage in the first place. She stood with effort. He was right. Loyalty makes you weak. Love makes you vulnerable. And I can't afford either anymore. Camille, please. But she was already walking toward the door, hand on her stomach, back straight despite the weight she carried. She paused at the threshold, didn't turn around. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I really did love you like a sister. But sisters don't survive in places like this. Then she was gone. The door locked behind her. Evelyn doubled over, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The walls pressed in, the ceiling dropped. Everything collapsed into a single point of agony in her chest. She'd lost her freedom. She'd lost her dignity. Now she'd lost the only person who mattered, and she had no one to blame but herself. Weeks crawled by in gray monotony. No more visits, no more supervised garden walks. Just her room and meals and crushing isolation. Adrian stopped coming. Maybe Damien had forbidden it. Maybe Adrian was ashamed of his role in her destruction. Evelyn didn't care either way. She spent her days sketching increasingly dark images. Faces screaming, hands reaching through bars. Windows that opened onto nothing but void. Her art became a chronicle of psychological collapse. One morning in early spring, the door opened without warning. Damien entered carrying a leather portfolio. He looked different, tired, more human than usual. Miss Harper, he said, We need to discuss your future. I don't have a future. On the contrary, you're about to become very valuable. He set the portfolio on her desk. Open it. She didn't move. He opened it himself. Inside were photographs, paintings, sculptures, all expensive looking, all probably stolen. I've recently acquired several collections from, let's call them dissolved partnerships. European art, Asian antiquities, Renaissance pieces. He spread the photos across the desk. The problem is authentication. I need someone who understands art, who can verify value, spot forgeries. Why would I help you? Because the alternative is returning to the basement, permanently. He said it without inflection. I'm offering you purpose, work, a reason to be useful instead of just a burden consuming resources. I'm not an authenticator. I draw children's books. You have a fine arts degree from Pratt Institute, top of your class, specialized in art history before you pivoted to illustration. He'd done his research. You're more qualified than you pretend to be. Evelyn stared at the photographs. Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Ming Dynasty ceramics, millions of dollars in stolen property. If I do this, she said slowly, what do I get? Better accommodations, access to research materials, supervised trips to authentication facilities. He paused. And I'll restore Camille's privileges, not her friendship with you. That's dead. But the small comforts that made her imprisonment bearable, there it was, the real leverage, not her own freedom. Camille's suffering. You're evil, Evelyn whispered. I'm practical. Do we have an agreement? She thought about Camille locked in that tiny room, about the baby growing inside her in conditions of constant stress, about how her own stupid escape attempt had caused all of it. Yes, she said. We have an agreement. Damien smiled, actually smiled. Excellent. You start tomorrow. The work was consuming. They gave her an office, still locked, still monitored, but filled with reference books, computer access to art databases, proper lighting for examining pieces. Items arrived weekly. Paintings wrapped in cloth, sculptures in crates, jewelry in velvet boxes, all stolen, all requiring verification before Damien sold them to other criminals. Evelyn hated every second of it. But she was good at it, better than she wanted to admit. Years of studying art history came flooding back. She could spot a forgery from 30 feet, identify regional styles by brushstroke patterns, date ceramics by glaze composition. She became Damien's most valuable asset. He treated her accordingly. Better food, actual sunlight, trips under armed guard to university libraries and private collections where she examined comparative pieces. Still a prisoner. Just a useful one. Months passed. Seasons changed. Evelyn stopped counting days and started counting authenticated pieces instead. She never saw Camille. Sometimes she heard her voice echoing through hallways, laughter that sounded forced, conversations with staff about nursery colors and baby clothes. The pregnancy was progressing well. Damien made sure everyone knew. One afternoon in late summer, Evelyn was examining a supposed Vermeer when Adrian appeared in her office doorway. She didn't look up, hadn't spoken to him since the escape attempt. I know you hate me, he said quietly. Hate requires energy. I'm empty. Fair enough. He moved closer. For what it's worth, I didn't want to be part of it. Damien forced my hand. Everyone here is forced. That doesn't make betrayal hurt less. I brought you something. He set a small box on her desk. Charcoal pencils. The expensive kind you like. Evelyn finally looked up. Why? Because I remember you mentioning them months ago. Before everything went to hell. His expression was carefully neutral. And because I'm not the monster you think I am. Yes, you are. You're just better at hiding it. Adrian flinched like she'd struck him. Good. The baby's due in 6 weeks, he said, changing subjects. Girl, they're naming her Isabella. I don't care. Yes, you do. You're just afraid to care. He moved toward the door. For what it's worth, Camille asks about you sometimes, when Damien's not around. Tell her I'm fine. Are you? Evelyn returned to examining the Vermeer. Tell her I'm surviving. That's all any of us do here. After he left, she opened the box. The pencils were exactly the brand she'd wanted. Expensive Italian charcoal, the kind that created the richest blacks imaginable. She broke every single one in half and threw them in the trash. 3 weeks later, Camille went into labor. Evelyn heard the chaos from her office, shouting, medical equipment being rushed upstairs, Damien's voice giving sharp commands. She tried to focus on the Ming vase she was authenticating, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Somewhere above her, Camille was in pain, maybe dying, maybe bringing new life into this nightmare. And Evelyn couldn't do anything except sit in her locked office counting the cracks in the ceiling. Hours passed. Night fell. Around 3 a.m., someone knocked. Adrian stood there looking exhausted. "It's a girl. Both of them are fine." Relief crashed through her so hard she nearly fell. "Thank you," she whispered. "Damien says you can see her tomorrow, supervised." Adrian's voice softened. "I think Camille wants you there, even if she won't admit it." That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about a baby girl being born into a world of violence, about what kind of life Isabella would have, what kind of person she'd become, whether anyone could stay good in a place this dark. The next afternoon, guards escorted Evelyn to the nursery. It was beautiful, soft colors, expensive furniture, everything a child could need, everything except safety. Camille sat in a rocking chair holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink blankets. She looked exhausted, but somehow more whole than she'd been in months. Motherhood suited her, even here. "Hi," Evelyn said softly. Camille looked up. Her expression was complicated, not quite hostile, not quite welcoming. "You can hold her," she said finally. "If you want." Evelyn approached carefully, took the baby with shaking hands. Isabella was perfect. Tiny fists, dark hair, eyes that would probably be brown like Camille's. She made small noises and grabbed Evelyn's finger with surprising strength. "She's beautiful," Evelyn whispered. "She's mine." Camille said it fiercely, protectively. "Mine to protect. Mine to raise. Mine to make sure she survives this world." "I know. I need you to understand something." Camille stood, moving to the window. "I don't forgive you for the escape attempt, for making things worse, for proving to Damien that I'm weak because I care about people. I understand." "But," Camille's voice cracked, "Isabella needs someone besides me who actually gives a damn about her welfare, someone who isn't part of this family's corruption." "What are you asking?" "I'm asking you to stay alive, stay useful. And if something happens to me, if the pregnancy complications come back, if Damien decides I'm not valuable anymore, I need you to promise you'll look out for her." "Camille, promise me, Evelyn." She turned from the window, eyes blazing. "Promise me that my daughter won't grow up completely alone in this hell." Evelyn looked down at the baby in her arms, at this tiny, innocent thing who'd never asked to be born into a crime family, who deserved so much better than any of them could give her. "I promise," she said, and meant it. Over the following months, something shifted. Evelyn was allowed supervised visits with Isabella. Not often, never alone, but enough to watch her grow, roll over, smile, reach for toys with chubby hands. She became fluent in authentication work. Damien sent her to New York twice under heavy guard to verify pieces at private auctions. She saw her old neighborhood through car windows, smelled Brooklyn air, remembered who she used to be, then returned to her cage in Vermont. The work expanded. Damien trusted her with more responsibility, larger collections, higher stakes authentications that affected million-dollar transactions. She was becoming indispensable, which meant she was becoming more trapped than ever. One winter evening, almost 2 years into her captivity, Adrian brought news. "There's been a development," he said, closing her office door. "A situation that's going to change everything." "What kind of situation?" "A war. Between Damien's organization and the Calabrese family out of Boston." His face was grim. "It's been building for months, territory disputes, revenue conflicts. Yesterday, someone put 3 bullets in Damien's lieutenant outside a restaurant in Manhattan." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "Is Camille safe?" "For now. Damien's locked down the estate. Triple security. Nobody in or out without clearance." Adrian moved closer, voice dropping to barely a whisper. "But if things escalate, if the Calabrese family decides to hit him directly, they'd come here." "Yes. And when that happens, He didn't finish. Didn't need to. When violence came to Blackmere Estate, there would be no safe rooms, no protected spaces, just chaos and bullets and everyone caught in the crossfire, including Isabella.
What do I do? Evelyn whispered. You survive, like always. Adrian's hand briefly touched hers. And you pray Damien's as untouchable as he thinks he is. He left before she could ask more questions. That night, Evelyn lay in bed listening to sounds from outside. More guards, more weapons, the estate transforming into a fortress. She thought about Isabella sleeping in her nursery, about Camille trying to protect her daughter in a world that was about to explode.
About how the shy girl from Brooklyn had become someone who authenticated stolen art for a mafia boss while violence gathered like storm clouds. And she realized something terrible. She'd stopped fighting. Somewhere between the basement and the authentication work and the supervised visits with Isabella, she'd adapted, accepted, become compliant. The cage had won. 2 weeks later, everything shattered. Evelyn was working late when she heard gunfire. Not distant, right outside. Shouting in Italian. Return fire, glass breaking. She dove under her desk as her office window exploded inward. Cold air rushed in. More gunfire. Screaming. Someone was attacking the estate. The door burst open. A guard she didn't recognize, bleeding from a shoulder wound, grabbed her arm. Come with me. Now. What's happening? No time. Move. He dragged her through corridors filled with smoke and chaos. Bodies on the floor, some moving, some not. The smell of gunpowder and blood. They reached a reinforced door. The guard punched a code, shoved her inside. Stay here. Don't open this for anyone except me or Mr. Moretti. Where's Camille? Where's the baby? But he was already gone. Door sealing behind him with a heavy mechanical click. Evelyn found herself in some kind of safe room. Concrete walls, supplies, communications equipment, and complete terrible silence. She pressed her ear against the door but heard nothing except her own heartbeat. Hours crawled by. No one came. Eventually, exhaustion dragged her under. She slept in fits and starts, jolting awake at every imagined sound. When the door finally opened, dawn light filtered through cracks in the concrete. Damien stood there. His suit was torn. Blood on his shirt. Not his, based on how steady he stood. But his carefully maintained control had cracked. She saw it in his eyes. Something had broken. Come with me, he said flatly. She followed him through the estate. It looked like a war zone. Bullet holes, shattered glass. Blood stains the cleaning crew was already trying to erase. They'd won, obviously. The attack had failed. But at what cost? Damien led her to his office. Inside, Adrian sat in a chair looking like death. His hands were covered in blood. Tell her, Damien said coldly. Adrian looked up with eyes that held nothing but horror. Camille's dead, he whispered. Stray bullet during the attack. Hit her in the chest. She was trying to get to Isabella's room when the words dissolved into static. Evelyn's vision tunneled. Her knees buckled. Someone caught her, forced her into a chair. No, she heard herself saying. No, that's not, she can't be. She died protecting her daughter, Damien said. His voice was empty. Very heroic, very stupid. Evelyn lunged at him, didn't think, just moved. Guards grabbed her instantly, but she kept screaming, kept trying to reach him, to hurt him somehow, to make him feel even a fraction of the agony tearing her apart. You killed her. This is your fault. Your violence, your war, your... My wife, Damien said quietly. My loss. Something in his face made Evelyn stop struggling. He looked human. For the first time since she'd met him. Actually human. Actually grieving. Isabella is sleeping, he continued. She doesn't know yet. Doesn't understand why her mother won't come back. I need to see her. You will. But first we need to discuss the future. Damien moved to his desk with mechanical precision. Camille's death changes several variables, the most significant being Isabella's care. What are you talking about? I'm a single father now, running an organization in the middle of a territorial war. I can't provide the kind of attention a 2-year-old requires. He pulled out documents. You will. The room tilted. What? You're going to raise my daughter, full-time, as her primary caregiver. He said it like assigning a work task. You'll live in the nursery wing, have full access to Isabella, make decisions regarding her welfare and education. You can't just... I can. And I am. He looked at her directly. You promised Camille you'd protect Isabella. This is how you fulfill that promise. By becoming her surrogate mother in this nightmare? By giving her someone who actually cares whether she lives or dies. Damien's voice hardened. I am not a good father, Miss Harper. I'm barely a functional human being, but I know enough to recognize that Isabella needs someone better than me, someone who isn't corrupted by this life.
I'm already corrupted. You made sure of that. Then consider this penance. He slid the documents across the desk. Sign these. They give you legal guardianship in my absence, medical decision-making authority, everything you need to actually protect her. Evelyn stared at the papers, at the impossible choice being forced on her. Stay in this prison forever, raising the child of the man who destroyed her life, or refuse and watch Isabella grow up completely alone in a world of violence. She thought about Camille's voice. Promise me she won't grow up completely alone in this hell. Her hand shook as she signed. The funeral happened 2 days later. Small, private. Just family and key organization members. They buried Camille in the estate cemetery among dead Morettis dating back 100 years. Evelyn stood holding Isabella through the whole service. The toddler didn't understand, kept asking for Mama, kept crying when no one would explain why Mama wouldn't come. Damien stood apart from everyone, face like stone. No tears, no visible emotion. But after they lowered the casket, he walked to the grave alone. Stood there for an hour, not moving, just staring at the earth that held his dead wife. And Evelyn realized something that made her stomach turn. He'd actually loved Camille. In his own twisted, controlling way, he'd loved her. The monster had been capable of feeling after all. That night, Isabella finally fell asleep after hours of crying. Evelyn sat in the rocking chair holding her, staring at the darkened window. The shy girl from Brooklyn was completely gone now. In her place sat someone harder, colder. Someone who'd survived 2 years of psychological torture and come out the other side fundamentally changed. Someone who would spend the rest of her life raising the daughter of her best friend and the man who destroyed them both. The cage hadn't just trapped her. It had transformed her into something she barely recognized. And there was no going back. 3 years passed like a slow descent into numbness. Isabella became Evelyn's entire world. Morning routines, nap schedules, first words, first steps. Building blocks scattered across nursery floors and picture books read in soft voices while rain hammered against windows. The child was everything Camille should have lived to see. Every smile, every laugh, every moment of innocent joy happening in a house built on violence and stolen lives. Evelyn poured everything into making Isabella's childhood as normal as possible. Birthday parties with guards standing watch. Playground equipment installed in gardens patrolled by armed men. Stuffed animals and dolls and all the trappings of innocence surrounded by walls designed to keep the world out and prisoners in. Damien remained distant. He saw Isabella maybe twice a week. Brief visits where he stood in doorways watching his daughter play like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he'd leave without touching her, without speaking. Grief had turned him into something even colder than before. The war with the Calabrese family escalated. More bodies, more retaliation. The estate became a fortress with military-grade security and enough weapons to supply a small army. Evelyn stopped counting the guards, stopped flinching at gunfire echoing from distant parts of the property, stopped caring about anything except keeping Isabella safe and innocent for as long as possible. She was 30 now, 3 years older than the girl who'd arrived at a wedding in Vermont believing in fairy tales. That girl was dead. This woman knew better. One morning in early spring, Adrian knocked on the nursery door. "We need to talk," he said quietly, privately. Evelyn settled Isabella with toys and followed him to a sitting room down the hall. He looked worse than usual. Shadows under his eyes, new lines around his mouth. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Everything. The Calabrese situation is worse than anyone's admitting." He ran both hands through his hair. "They hit another one of our operations last night, killed 6 people, took $50,000 in cash." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because they're not going to stop until Damien's dead, or they are." Adrian's voice dropped.
And when the final confrontation happens, when they make their move on the estate, it won't be a surgical strike. It'll be total war. You think they're coming here? I know they are. Our intelligence says they're planning something massive. Within the month. He grabbed her shoulders. You need to be ready. Have an escape plan, because when it starts, the guards aren't going to prioritize protecting you or Isabella. They're going to fight. And if we lose, He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I can't just leave, Evelyn said. The gates, the forest. I'd never make it with a 4-year-old. I'm working on something, a way out when everything collapses. His eyes were desperate. But you have to promise me you'll take it. No hesitation, no looking back. Why are you helping me? Because someone should get out of this nightmare alive. He released her shoulders. And because I'm tired of watching good people die for Damien's ambitions. After he left, Evelyn stood at the window watching Isabella play in the garden below. Guards everywhere. Weapons concealed under jackets. The illusion of safety maintained through constant vigilance, but illusions shattered. She'd learned that lesson years ago. 2 weeks later, Damien summoned her to his office. She went reluctantly, leaving Isabella with the nanny she'd finally been allowed to hire after months of negotiations. Damien looked different, thinner, gray starting to thread through his dark hair. The war was aging him in ways violence never had. Sit, he said. She sat. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, pushed one across the desk. Drink. I don't. Tonight you do. It wasn't a request. Evelyn took the glass, sipped. The burn felt good, real. Damien drank his entire glass in one swallow, poured another. I've made arrangements, he said. If something happens to me, when something happens, you'll receive full custody of Isabella, legal documentation, financial support, everything you need to leave Vermont and never look back. Her heart hammered. What are you talking about? The Calabrese family is planning their final move, 3 days from now. We have intelligence. I'm preparing accordingly. He met her eyes. I don't expect to survive it. Then don't fight. Leave. Take Isabella and... I can't. This is my territory, my organization. Running would mean death for my own people before the Calabrese could finish me. He said it like discussing weather. So I'm going to make my stand here, and you're going to take my daughter away from this life. She's 4 years old. She doesn't understand. She will. Eventually. And when she does, you're going to tell her that her father was a criminal who built everything on blood and theft, that her mother was forced into marriage to pay a debt, that nothing about her existence was good or pure. His voice never wavered. But you're also going to tell her that I made sure she got out, that my last decision was protecting her from becoming what I am. Tears burned Evelyn's eyes. She hated him, hated everything he'd done. But this one decent act, was more than she'd expected. Why tell me this now? She whispered. Because 3 days isn't enough time to process. I'm giving you warning so you can prepare. He stood, moving to the window. Adrian will handle the logistics. He knows the plan. When the attack starts, you follow his instructions exactly. What about you? I'll be doing what I do best. Destroying anyone who threatens what's mine. He turned back. Isabella is mine, Miss Harper. But she's also yours now. You've raised her more than I ever could. You've given her something I'm not capable of providing. What's that? Love. Actual love. Not control. Not possession. His expression was unreadable. Camille was right about you. You're stronger than anyone thought. She's dead because of you. Yes, she is. He said it without flinching. And I'll carry that until whatever's waiting on the other side of this life. But her daughter will survive. You'll make sure of that. He dismissed her before she could respond. Evelyn returned to the nursery in a daze. Isabella ran to her immediately, sticky hands grabbing her legs. Evie, look, I drew a picture. It was terrible, beautiful. A child's chaos of colors that might have been people or trees or nothing at all. It's perfect, Evelyn whispered, picking her up. You're perfect. That night she packed a bag. Clothes for Isabella. Important documents. The small amount of money she'd been allowed to accumulate. Everything that could fit in one backpack. Then she hid it in the back of Isabella's closet behind stuffed animals and toys. Waiting. Adrian came the next day. It's tomorrow night, he said without preamble. The Calabrese family is coming with everything they have. 40 men, heavy weapons. They're not taking prisoners. What's the plan? At midnight, I'm going to trigger the emergency evacuation protocol. Alarms, chaos. In that confusion, you take Isabella through the service tunnels beneath the East Wing. There's an exit that leads to the forest. I'll have a car waiting 1 mile north with keys in the ignition. And then what? Drive. Don't stop until you're in Canada. Use the documents Damien prepared. New identities, new lives. He grabbed her hand. You'll have maybe 20 minutes before anyone realizes you're gone. After that, I'm on my own. Yes. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. For everything. For the trap. For the basement. For every moment I could have helped you. And didn't. Why help me now? Because I'm tired of being a coward. He pressed something into her palm. A key. Service tunnel entrance is behind the pantry wall. Third stone from the left. Push and it opens. Are you coming with us? No, someone has to stay and make sure the evacuation looks legitimate. Buy you time. He smiled sadly. Besides, I've done too many terrible things. I don't deserve escape. Adrian, take care of her. Give her the life none of us got to have. He was already walking away. Tomorrow night, midnight. Don't hesitate. The next day stretched into eternity. Evelyn played with Isabella like normal, read stories, built towers from blocks and knocked them down, pretended everything was fine while her heart hammered against her ribs. She fed Isabella dinner early, gave her a bath, put her in warm clothes under the guise of pajamas being cold. Are we going somewhere? Isabella asked with a 4-year-old's unsettling perceptiveness. Maybe, Evelyn said carefully. Would you like an adventure? With you? Yes, with me. Okay. Isabella bounced excitedly. Can we bring Mr. Whiskers? Mr. Whiskers was a stuffed rabbit. Evelyn grabbed it along with the hidden backpack. At 11:30, she sat in the dark nursery holding Isabella while the child slept, watching the clock, counting seconds. At 11:45, gunfire erupted. Not close, distant, near the main gates. Isabella jolted awake. What's that noise? Just fireworks, sweetheart. Evelyn's voice stayed calm through pure force of will. Come on, we're going on that adventure now. She grabbed the backpack, carried Isabella into the hallway. More gunfire, closer now, shouting in Italian. Alarms suddenly blaring through the entire estate. Evelyn ran. Down hallways she'd memorized during 3 years of captivity, past guards rushing toward the sound of battle, through the kitchen where staff huddled in corners looking terrified, behind the pantry wall. Third stone from the left. She pushed. The wall swung inward, revealing darkness and stone steps descending. I'm scared, Isabella whimpered. I know, baby. I know. But I need you to be very brave right now. Evelyn kissed her head. Can you do that? Yes. They descended into tunnels that smelled like earth and rot. Evelyn used her phone flashlight to navigate. The backpack bounced against her shoulders. Isabella's arms wrapped around her neck so tightly it hurt. Behind them, the sounds of war intensified. Explosions now, screaming, the distinct crack of automatic weapons. The estate was falling. The tunnels seemed endless. Water dripped from ceiling, rats scattered in the darkness. Isabella buried her face in Evelyn's shoulder and cried silently. Finally, stairs leading up. Evelyn climbed, her legs burned. Arms screamed from carrying 35 pounds of child and supplies. A metal door, locked. She used Adrian's key. It turned. The door opened onto cold night air and forest. Behind her, the estate was visible through the trees. Flames rising from several buildings. Gunfire like thunder. Smoke billowing into the starless sky. She ran, through forest, branches tearing at her clothes, roots trying to trip her. Isabella bouncing with every step but holding on tight. 1 mile north. Adrian said 1 mile north. Her lungs burned, legs turned to rubber, but she kept moving because stopping meant death. 15 minutes, 20. Then she saw it. A car. Old sedan. Keys in the ignition just like promised. Evelyn threw the backpack in back. Strapped Isabella into a car seat that shouldn't have been there but was. Started the engine. It roared to life. She pressed the accelerator and drove. Away from the burning estate. away from the only life Isabella had ever known, away from 3 years of captivity and torture and stolen time, toward whatever came next. The road was narrow, winding. Her hand shook so badly she could barely grip the wheel. In the rearview mirror, flames painted the sky orange. "Where's Daddy?" Isabella asked in a small voice. Evelyn's throat closed. "Your daddy had to stay home." "Is he fighting the bad men?" "Yes, sweetheart, he's fighting." "Will he come find us?" The question broke something inside Evelyn's chest. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know." She drove for 3 hours, put as much distance between them and Vermont as possible before exhaustion made continuing dangerous. Found a motel, paid cash, locked the door, and barricaded it with furniture. Isabella fell asleep immediately, exhausted, traumatized, but safe. Evelyn sat by the window watching the parking lot, waiting for guards to appear, for Damien to somehow survive and come after them, for the nightmare to continue. But nothing happened, just silence, and the slow, terrifying realization that she was actually free. Morning came gray and cold. Evelyn turned on the motel TV while Isabella slept. The news was already covering it. Breaking news from Vermont, where a violent confrontation at a private estate has left at least 25 people dead. Authorities are describing it as a gang war between organized crime factions. Among the deceased is Damien Moretti, alleged head of the Moretti crime syndicate, who was killed during the assault on his property. The newscaster's voice faded to static. Dead. Damien Moretti was dead. The monster who'd held her captive for 3 years, who destroyed her life and Camille's life and built everything on blood and suffering, gone. Evelyn should have felt relief, victory. Instead, she just felt empty. Behind her, Isabella stirred. "Evie, I'm hungry." Evelyn turned off the TV, forced a smile. "Let's go get breakfast, sweetheart." They found a diner, ordered pancakes and orange juice, sat in a corner booth while the world continued around them like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Isabella was free from the Moretti legacy, free from growing up in a world of violence, free to become someone better than any of them. And Evelyn was responsible for making that happen. "Are we going home?" Isabella asked between bites of pancake. "We're going to a new home," Evelyn said carefully. "A different place, with new friends and new adventures." "Will Daddy find us there?" The question stabbed. Evelyn reached across the table, took Isabella's small hand. "Your daddy loved you very much, and he wanted you to be safe and happy. That's why we left, because he wanted better for you than what he had." "Is he in heaven now?" The word made Evelyn's chest ache. She didn't know how to explain death to a 4-year-old. Didn't know how to make sense of a man who'd been both monster and father. "Yes," she said finally. "He's at peace now." "And Mama?" "Yes. Mama too." "Are they together?" "I hope so, baby. I really hope so." Isabella nodded like this made perfect sense. Went back to eating pancakes. 4-year-old brain processing trauma in the only way it knew how, by moving forward. After breakfast, they got back in the car. Evelyn drove north following Adrian's instructions. New identities waited in a safety deposit box in Montreal. Money, documentation, everything needed to disappear completely. The border crossing was terrifying. Guards checking passports, questions about their destination. Isabella falling asleep against her shoulder while Evelyn's heart hammered. But the forged documents held. They were waved through, into Canada, into a new country, a new life. Evelyn found the bank, retrieved the safety deposit box. Inside were passports identifying them as Emma and Sophie Chen. Birth certificates, social security cards, $50,000 in cash, and a letter in Adrian's handwriting. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, you made it. I'm proud of you. Prouder than I have any right to be. The money should last until you get settled. There's more in a trust fund under Isabella's new name, enough to pay for college, a wedding, a life. Damien did one decent thing before the end. He made sure his daughter could escape. Honor that by giving her everything we never got. I won't be coming after you. By the time you read this, I'll either be dead or in prison. Either way, you're free. Tell Isabella her father wasn't all monster. Tell her he tried at the end to do right. Take care of each other." Evelyn folded the letter carefully. Put it in the backpack. Someday she'd show it to Isabella. When the girl was old enough to understand, old enough to process the complicated truth about where she came from. But for now, they had to focus on building something new. She found a small apartment in Montreal. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen and windows that let in actual sunlight. No locks on the outside. No guards. No cameras. True freedom for the first time in years. Isabella adapted faster than Evelyn expected. Kids were resilient like that. She started preschool, made friends, laughed and played, and slowly forgot the darkness of her first home. Evelyn got work freelancing again. Children's books. Magazine illustrations. Using her real skills instead of authenticating stolen art for criminals. Months passed. Seasons changed. Winter came to Montreal and covered everything in clean white snow. One evening, Evelyn stood at the window watching Isabella play in the courtyard below, building a snowman with other children, shrieking with joy, completely, beautifully normal. And Evelyn realized she was crying, not from sadness, from relief. The nightmare was over. They'd survived. But even as she watched her adopted daughter play, even as safety wrapped around them like a blanket, Evelyn knew certain truths would follow them forever. The basement, the betrayal, the years lost. Camille's voice, Damien's cold eyes, Adrian's final kindness. All of it lived inside her now, part of her DNA, written into her bones. The shy girl from Brooklyn was never coming back. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the woman who'd survived 3 years in hell and escaped with a child who wasn't hers had earned the right to build something better. Maybe strength wasn't about returning to who you were before. Maybe it was about becoming someone new, someone harder, colder, more capable. Someone who could stand at a window watching a 4-year-old play in snow and know, absolutely know, that she'd burn down the entire world before letting anyone hurt that child again. Evelyn pressed her hand against the cold glass. "I kept my promise, Cam," she whispered. "She's safe. She's happy. And she'll never know the cage we lived in." Outside, Isabella looked up, saw her watching, waved enthusiastically. Evelyn waved back and smiled. For the first time in 3 years, it wasn't forced. It was real. But that night, after Isabella fell asleep, Evelyn sat in the dark living room staring at nothing. Because even though they'd escaped, even though they were safe, she knew the truth. Blackmere Estate might be behind them, but its shadow would follow them forever. And somewhere in that shadow, pieces of who she used to be lay scattered like broken glass. The question wasn't whether she could put them back together. The question was whether she even wanted to. Because the woman who'd survived hell didn't need the girl who'd believed in fairy tales. She needed the strength to keep surviving, day after day, year after year, until Isabella grew up strong enough to face the truth about where she came from. And together, maybe they could finally let go of the ghosts. But not yet. Not yet. 5 years after Montreal, Evelyn woke to Isabella screaming. She was in the child's room before conscious thought kicked in, heart hammering, body already moving through muscle memory trained by years of hypervigilance. Isabella sat upright in bed, tears streaming, hands clutching her blanket. "Shh, baby, I'm here. I'm here." Evelyn gathered her close, rocking gently. "It was just a dream. There were loud noises," Isabella sobbed, "and fire, and you were gone." 9 years old now, old enough to remember fragments of that night, old enough for trauma to resurface in nightmares that medication and therapy couldn't fully silence. "I'm not going anywhere," Evelyn whispered into her hair. "I promise. You're safe." But promises felt hollow when spoken in darkness. They'd built a good life in Montreal. Evelyn worked steadily as a freelance illustrator, her client list growing as her reputation recovered. Isabella attended a good school, had friends, played soccer on weekends. On paper, they looked like any other single mother and daughter navigating life together. Nobody knew about Vermont, about Blackmere Estate, about the 3 years Evelyn spent as a hostage, or the violence that had birthed Isabella's freedom. The lies of omission stacked higher every year. After Isabella finally fell back asleep, Evelyn returned to her own room, but couldn't settle. She stood at the window watching Montreal's pre-dawn streets, thinking about ghosts that refused to stay buried. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. "Hello?" Silence. Breathing. Then a voice she hadn't heard in 5 years. "It's Adrian. The room tilted. Evelyn gripped the windowsill to stay upright. "You're alive." "Disappointed?" His voice sounded older, rougher. "I got out during the chaos. Been in witness protection. They just released me from the program." "Why are you calling?" "Because you need to know something about that night, about what really happened." He paused. "Can we meet? Tomorrow, public place. I swear I'm not here to hurt you." Every instinct screamed to hang up, to block the number, to pretend the past stayed dead, but she needed answers. After 5 years of nightmares and half-truths, she needed to know. "Where?" she asked. They met at a coffee shop in downtown Montreal, neutral territory. Evelyn arrived early, positioned herself where she could see all exits, kept her hand near the pepper spray in her purse. When Adrian walked in, she barely recognized him. The polished man from Blackmere Estate was gone. This version looked weathered, haunted, carrying weight that showed in every movement. Gray threaded through his hair. Scars she didn't remember marked his hands. He sat down carefully, keeping his hands visible on the table. "You look good," he said. "Healthy." "You look like hell." Fair assessment. He ordered coffee. Neither of them would drink. "How's Isabella?" "You don't get to ask about her." "I know. I'm sorry. I needed to know she made it out okay." "Why are you here, Adrian?" Evelyn's voice was ice. 5 years. No contact. No warning. Now you show up wanting to talk about that night? "Because I've been carrying something that isn't mine to carry alone." He pulled out a worn envelope, set it on the table between them. "Damien wrote this. Before the attack. He gave it to me with instructions to deliver it to you if he died." Evelyn stared at the envelope like it was a snake. "I don't want it." "You need it. Trust me." Adrian pushed it closer. "I read it, against his instructions, and it changes everything you think you know about your captivity." "Nothing changes what he did." "No, but it might change why." Adrian stood. "Read it or burn it. That's your choice, but I drove 8 hours to make sure you had the option." He left before she could respond. Evelyn sat alone in the coffee shop staring at the envelope. Damien's handwriting on the front. Just her name in sharp, precise letters. She should burn it, throw it away, deny him any final words from beyond the grave. Instead, she opened it. The letter was dated 2 days before the attack. "Miss Harper, if you're reading this, my daughter is safe." That was the only thing that mattered in the end. "You believe I kept you captive out of cruelty or strategic advantage. Partially true. But there's context you were never given." The day after Camille's wedding, her father contacted the Calabrese family. Told them about you. About how much Camille cared for you. He was trying to create leverage for himself. Proof he still had value to offer various interested parties. The Calabrese family planned to kidnap you themselves, use you against both Camille and me. They had people positioned outside the estate, waiting. I intercepted their communications. Made a choice. If you were going to be a hostage, better mine than theirs. At least I had rules. Standards. The Calabrese family would have destroyed you for entertainment. So I took you first. Kept you contained. Safe, after a fashion, from worse fates. You'll say this doesn't absolve me. You're right. It doesn't. But I want you to know that the basement, the punishment after your escape attempt, that wasn't anger. That was theater. Adrian reported that the Calabrese family had surveillance inside my organization. They needed to see you broken. Compliant. Not worth the effort of extracting. It worked. They stopped planning your abduction. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for understanding. Camille's death destroyed something in me I didn't know still existed. The capacity for regret, for grief, for recognizing that every choice has weight beyond strategic calculation. I don't know if there's anything after this life. But if there is, I hope Camille forgives me for failing to protect her. And I hope Isabella never learns what her father really was. Take care of my daughter. Give her everything I couldn't. D. Moretti. Evelyn read it 3 times. Then she walked outside and threw up in an alley. The letter rewrote everything. The captivity she'd endured, horrible, traumatic, unforgivable, had also been protective. A cage that kept worse predators at bay. Damien Moretti hadn't been just a monster. He'd been a monster trying to protect people from other monsters. The distinction felt meaningless and essential all at once. She called Adrian from a burner phone that afternoon. "You read it," he said. Not a question. Was he telling the truth? Yes. I saw the Calabrese surveillance reports myself. They had photos of you, plans. If Damien hadn't taken you first, he didn't finish. I know it doesn't make what happened okay, but it's the truth. Why did you help me escape that night? Because Damien asked me to. His last order before the attack. Make sure you and Isabella got out no matter what. Adrian's voice cracked. He died buying you time. Held the Calabrese forces at the front gates while I got you through the tunnels. He died fighting. He died choosing. For once in his miserable life, he chose something besides power. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. He chose his daughter's freedom, and yours. After the call ended, Evelyn sat in her apartment staring at nothing. Understanding didn't erase trauma. Truth didn't heal wounds. But it shifted the landscape of her memories into something more complex than pure victimhood and pure villainy. Damien Moretti had destroyed her life. He'd also saved it. Both things were true. That night, Isabella came to her room, unable to sleep again. "Are you okay, Evie? You seem sad." "Just thinking about old things, sweetheart." "About before Montreal?" They'd told Isabella edited versions of the truth, that her parents died in an accident, that Evelyn had been a friend who took her in. Simple narrative, clean. But 9-year-olds asked harder questions now. "Can I tell you something?" Evelyn pulled Isabella close. "About your father. You said we shouldn't talk about him. I was wrong. You deserve to know." She took a breath. "Your father wasn't a good man. He did bad things, hurt people, built a life on violence." Isabella's eyes went wide. "Was he a bad guy? Like in movies?" "Yes, like in movies, but..." Evelyn chose her words carefully. "He loved your mother, and he loved you. And at the very end, he made sure you could escape the bad things he'd done, that you could be safe and have a different life." "Did he die saving us?" "Yes, baby, he did." Isabella processed this with the gravity only children possess. So he was a bad guy who did one good thing? Something like that. Mama too? Your mama was never bad. She was trapped in a situation she didn't choose, but she was kind and brave and she loved you more than anything in the world. Do you miss her? The question landed like a blade. Evelyn felt tears burning but refused to let them fall in front of Isabella. Every single day. Me too. Even though I don't remember her much. Isabella hugged her tighter. But I'm glad I have you. I'm glad I have you too, sweetheart. After Isabella fell asleep, Evelyn sat up writing. Not illustrations, words. A letter to Camille that would never be sent. To the friend she'd lost. To the woman whose daughter she was raising. To the ghost that followed her through every moment. Dear Cam, she's 9 now. Beautiful, smart. She has your laugh. Your way of tilting her head when she's thinking hard about something. I'm doing my best. Some days are better than others. She has nightmares sometimes. So do I. But we're surviving. We're building something. I forgave Damien today. Not for what he did to us, but for trying, at the end, to do right by Isabella. I think you'd understand that. You always saw complexity where I only saw black and white. I miss you. I miss the version of myself that existed before Vermont. Before I learned how to authenticate stolen art and survive psychological torture and raise a child who isn't mine but absolutely is. I hope wherever you are, you're at peace. I hope you know Isabella is loved, protected, free. That's all I can give you, but I'll keep giving it, every day, until she's old enough to decide for herself what she wants to be. Love always, Evie. She folded the letter carefully, put it in a box with other unsent letters. Other words meant for ghosts. Then she slept. The years continued. Isabella grew, started middle school, made friends and lost them and made new ones, developed interests in art and music and soccer, normal childhood things. But the nightmares persisted. Therapy helped. Medication helped. Evelyn's constant presence helped. Some wounds just didn't fully heal. On Isabella's 13th birthday, she asked the question Evelyn had been dreading. I want to know the real story. About where I came from. About what happened. They were sitting in the apartment eating birthday cake. Just the two of them, the way it had always been. Evelyn set down her fork. Are you sure? I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle the truth. The truth is complicated. So tell me the complicated version. So Evelyn did. She told her about the wedding, about Damien and the debt, about 3 years as a hostage, about Camille's death and the escape, and Adrian's letter 5 years later. She left nothing out. No sugarcoating, no simplified narrative. Just the raw, terrible truth of where Isabella had come from and how she'd survived. When she finished, Isabella sat quietly for a long time. So my father was a mafia boss, she said finally, and my mother was forced to marry him, and you were kidnapped and kept prisoner. Yes. And you stayed because you promised to protect me. Yes. That's... Isabella's voice broke. That's the most horrible and most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Which part? All of it. Tears streamed down her face. You gave up everything for me. You didn't have to. I wasn't your kid. But you stayed anyway. You became my kid the moment I held you in that nursery. Evelyn pulled her close. Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. They cried together. Grieving the parents Isabella never really knew. Grieving the innocence she'd just lost. Grieving the complicated truth that would follow them both forever. But when the tears stopped, something had shifted. Isabella looked at Evelyn with different eyes. Not a child looking at a guardian. An equal, recognizing sacrifice. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Because I understand now. What you lost, what you survived, what you became to keep me safe. I became someone who loves you. That's all that matters. High school brought new challenges. Isabella struggled with identity, with anger at her father's legacy, with grief for a mother she barely remembered. But she was strong. Stronger than Evelyn had been at that age. She channeled the anger into art, painting and sculpture that processed trauma through creation. Some of it was dark, violent, reflecting the knowledge of where she'd come from. Some of it was beautiful, hopeful, proving she was more than her origins. Evelyn watched her grow with pride and heartbreak mixed together. This girl, this young woman, was everything good that had come from the nightmare. On Isabella's 16th birthday, Adrian called again. I heard it's her birthday, he said. I wanted to send a gift, if that's okay. Why now? Because I'm dying, cancer, 6 months if I'm lucky. He said it matter-of-factly. I wanted to make amends before the end. I don't know if she wants anything from you. Ask her. If she says no, I'll respect it. Evelyn asked. Isabella thought for a long time, then said, I want to meet him. I want to hear his version of what happened. They flew to Boston, where Adrian was living in a hospice facility. He looked skeletal, tubes and monitors keeping him functional, but his eyes were clear when Isabella walked in. You look like Camille, he said softly. So much like her it hurts. Tell me about my mother, Isabella said. No preamble, no small talk. Tell me who she was before everything went wrong. So Adrian did. He told stories about Camille's laugh, her fearlessness, the way she'd light up a room, the friendship between her and Evelyn that had been genuine and deep before Vermont shattered everything. He told her about Damien, too, the complicated man behind the monster, his intelligence, his ruthlessness, the single moment of humanity at the end. And he told her about the escape, about Damien's last order, about how he'd lived with guilt for 5 years before reaching out. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Adrian finished. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that at the end, people tried. We failed at a lot of things, but we tried to do right by you. Isabella was quiet for a long time. Then she stood and hugged him. He broke down completely, sobbing, apologizing, begging for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. I don't forgive you, Isabella said clearly, but I understand you, and that's something. They left soon after, flew back to Montreal. Adrian died 2 months later. Evelyn and Isabella attended the small funeral. There were maybe 10 people there, most of them former associates who'd survived the collapse of the Moretti organization. At the graveside, Isabella placed a single white rose. For trying, she said quietly. At the end, for trying. It was more grace than most people deserved. But Isabella had learned something her father never understood. Strength wasn't about control or violence. It was about choosing mercy when vengeance would be easier. College came. Isabella got accepted to several schools. Chose one in Vancouver for art and design. Evelyn helped her pack, drove her across the country, settled her into a dorm room that looked exactly like every other freshman's space. "You going to be okay?" Isabella asked. "Living alone for the first time in years? I survived 3 years in captivity. I think I can handle an empty apartment." Evelyn tried to smile. "You focus on building your life. That's what all this was for." "I know, but—" Isabella grabbed her hand. "You gave up 18 years for me. You don't have to keep giving. You can live for yourself now. Taking care of you was living for myself. You gave me purpose when I had nothing left." "So what's your purpose now?" The question sat heavy between them.
"I guess I'll figure that out," Evelyn said finally. They hugged, cried, said all the things parents and children say at moments like this. Then Evelyn drove back to Montreal alone. The apartment felt enormous and empty. She wandered through rooms that echoed, looked at photos covering the walls. Isabella at 5, at 9, at 13, at 16. Every year documented, every moment preserved. A life built from ashes.
That night, Evelyn pulled out her old sketchbooks. The ones from before Vermont. Before everything changed. Gentle illustrations, soft colors. Work from a woman who believed the world was fundamentally kind. She didn't recognize that person anymore. But maybe that was okay. She opened a fresh sketchbook. Started drawing. Not children's illustrations. Something darker. More complex. A graphic novel exploring trauma and survival, and the complicated nature of good and evil. The images came fast and angry. Characters with hollow eyes, cages that looked like luxury, monsters who wore human faces. She worked through the night, through the next day, through weeks and months. The story poured out. Everything she'd survived, everything she'd witnessed. The truth about Black Mirror Estate told through art that didn't flinch. When she finally finished, she had 300 pages. She titled it simply The Cage. Publishers called it raw, powerful, unflinching. They wanted to buy it, market it, turn it into something commercial. Evelyn said no to all of them. Instead, she self-published. Put it online for free. Let anyone who needed to read it find their way to it. Within months, it went viral. Survivors of abuse found themselves in the pages. People trapped in situations they couldn't escape saw their truth reflected. The book became a touchstone for conversations about captivity, survival, and the complexity of human nature. Evelyn did interviews, panels, speaking engagements. She told her story, not as a victim, as a survivor who'd found strength in the darkest places. On Isabella's 21st birthday, they met in Vancouver for dinner. Isabella looked radiant, confident. She'd found her voice through art, had gallery shows, was making a name for herself as an artist exploring themes of legacy and identity. "I'm proud of you," Evelyn said over wine. "Everything you've become, everything you're building." "I learned from the best," Isabella raised her glass, "to surviving, to building something beautiful from trauma." They toasted. Later, walking through Vancouver streets, Isabella said, "I'm working on a new series about mothers and daughters, about chosen family. Tell me about it." It's about a woman who sacrificed everything to save a child who wasn't hers, who built a life from nothing, who taught me that strength isn't about never breaking, it's about healing and growing anyway. Evelyn's throat tightened. "That's beautiful. It's you. Everything I am is because you chose to stay when leaving would have been easier." Isabella stopped walking, turned to face her. "You saved me. Not just physically, you saved who I could become." "You saved me too," Evelyn whispered. "You gave me a reason to survive when I had nothing left." They stood together under Vancouver streetlights, two women bound by tragedy and choice, by years of building something from ruins. Neither of them was the person they'd been before Vermont. They were something harder, stronger, more complex, and they'd survived. Years later, when Evelyn was 52 and Isabella was 30, they returned to Vermont, not to Black Mirror Estate. That had been demolished years ago, torn down and sold for parts, the land reclaimed by forest, but to the cemetery where Camille was buried. They stood together at the grave. Evelyn placed flowers. Isabella stood silent,
I wish I remembered her more, Isabella said finally. I have fragments, images, but not her. She was brave, funny, loyal to a fault. Evelyn touched the headstone. She would be so proud of you. Do you think she'd forgive me for living when she died? There's nothing to forgive. She died protecting you, making sure you had a chance. Evelyn pulled Isabella close. Her last gift was your life. Don't waste it on guilt. They stayed until sunset, talking to a ghost who couldn't answer, saying goodbye to a woman who lived more in memory than reality. When they finally left, Evelyn felt something shift inside her chest. The weight she'd been carrying for decades, the guilt, the rage, the trauma. It didn't disappear. Wounds like that never fully heal, but it lightened, just enough to breathe easier. On the drive back to Montreal, Isabella asked, "Do you have any regrets?" Evelyn thought for a long time. I regret the time I lost, the innocence, the version of myself that believed the world was kind. She glanced at Isabella. But I don't regret you. I don't regret choosing to stay. I don't regret building this life we have, even though it cost you everything. It didn't cost me everything. It cost me one version of my life and gave me a different one. Evelyn's voice was steady. I became someone stronger, someone who could survive hell and come out the other side still capable of love. That's what I want to be, Isabella said quietly. Someone who survives and still loves anyway. You already are. That night, back in her apartment, Evelyn pulled out the box of unsent letters. She read through them one by one. Letters to Camille, to her former self, to the girl from Brooklyn who'd believed in fairy tales. Then she burned them. Not to forget, but to release. The past would always be part of her. Blackmere Estate, the basement, 3 years stolen. Camille's death. But it didn't define her anymore. She'd survived. She'd raised a child into a woman worth knowing. She'd built something meaningful from ashes. That was enough. Evelyn stood at her window watching Montreal at night, lights spreading endlessly, people living their lives unaware of the darkness that existed in places like Vermont estates and locked rooms and psychological torture disguised as protection. She was one of them now, anonymous, free. The shy girl kidnapped by a mafia boss was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that survival wasn't about returning to who you were before trauma. It was about becoming someone new, someone harder and softer, all at once. Someone who could hold complexity without breaking, someone who could stand at a window and feel gratitude instead of rage. The cage was gone, but what remained was stronger than anything it had tried to destroy. Evelyn smiled. For the first time in 30 years, the smile reached all the way to her eyes. Outside, the city lived and breathed and continued forward, and so did she.